Aloha and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our rules and regulations webinar. So with me here today, I have Chuck Garrett. Chuck is the principal broker of Corcoran Pacific. Chuck is also currently the vice president of High Central MLS, and he will be next year's MLS president. And he was also chair of our rules task force. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karen Shaughnessy. Karen is a broker in charge with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Hawaii. I think I got your whole title there. So Karen is a director on the High Central MLS board, and she is also a member of the rules task force that we have. Also joining us is Lynn Murison, HBR's professional standards senior administrator, because in today's session, we will link your ethical behavior and your protecting the realtor brand with our MLS rules and regulations. I'm Suzanne Young, CEO for HBR and High Central MLS, and we also have Jennifer Sakamoto, our client success manager. She was the staff liaison for our task force, and she is managing our back end for today's webinar. So welcome. I am going to ask a question. Jen, are we sharing the slides? Is that so? Okay.
Here we are.
Just wanted to make sure. Okay, so what I want to share with you is as our task force worked on our rules, we do the rule changes every 2 years. So this was the year that we took up working on our rules, and we always keep in mind our mission statement, which is to collect, compile, share data that is accurate, timely, and complete. That's for the benefit of you, and that's for the benefit of your consumers, and protects our realtor brand. Your High Central MLS board, I just introduced you to Chuck. For this year, this is your 2022 board of directors. These are the folks that approve the changes. As recommendations from the task force, John Climaldi is your president. I did want to, if you can go back, Jen, I do want to call your attention. So John, Trevor, and Shannon Heaven have had their final meeting of 2022. And for 2023, as I said, Chuck will be the president of MLS. Congratulations to Kathy Matthews, who will serve as vice president in 2023. And then new members to the board of directors will be Brad Conashiro, the principal broker of Sotheby's International, and David Lundstrom, broker in charge with Hawaii Life. And then our 2023 president-elect for HBR will be Fran Gendrano. So I just wanted to introduce you to all of those. So as I had said, our High Central MLS Rules and Regulations Task Force took up the charge this year and spent an incredible amount of time working on input from our members and really looking at how do we enhance the rules that ultimately will protect our realtor brand. And protecting our realtor brand really means signifying to the public this higher level of professionalism that consumers can rely on. And then at the same time, increasing the value of the MLS through transparency. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chuck Garrett, the chair of the task force, to kind of get into the meat of what the rules are. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Suzanne. Actually, so my co-host, Karen Shaughnessy, is going to go first. There are 7 major areas that we're going to review, and Karen is up first to talk about the first system change.
Right. The slide before was actually the task force, and these are the individuals. I really want to showcase the diversity that we had, their expertise, and how we were really pulling all together as we listen to the MLS staff, how things come through to them, and what we hear from the general public community as well. So as we go through, Chuck and I, these 7 points, you're going to see something that's either a system change or a rule change. So thank you, Jen. The first one, as we know, ADU has always been, have been on the rise, particularly since the pandemic. And in the year 2021, there was over 100,000 units nationwide on ADUs. So there has been multiple requests. Is there a search function where now the consumer or the agents can search for ADUs, the accessory dwelling units? So they were able to accomplish this. And so what we have added is a particular field. You will now see secondary dwellings. You'll see the word Ohana and you'll see the word ADU. They'll be separated. What will happen is that when you go to list an ADU, it was really felt that to protect the value of the realtor as well, the task force thought we should add some layers into it to authenticate, is it an ADU? So you will be required to put in the permit number for the ADU as well as the completion date. In the QR code, there is a full screenshot walks you all the way through how to easily locate on the DPP's website an actual ADU, because we wanted to make it clear that it wasn't a rec room, it wasn't a pool room. If we are advertising an ADU and you're putting it into a listing, that it will be specific with those two, the permit number and the completion.
Okay, so you'll note on the slide, it says Articles 1 and 2. Article 1 in the Code of Ethics says that you have to work in the best interests of your client. Your client may think he has an ADU, but not actually have one. So that's easily to research and protect him from court. And it's also a material fact. So Article 2, you won't be misrepresenting anything. And for buyer's agents also, you have this ability to check. You don't want your buyer buying something and then finding out he's not getting what he wants. So this is why these new changes are so wonderful. They mesh with the Code of Ethics. And I'm just going to, this is a little pamphlet that would be great for you to have in your bag of tricks, realtors, and you can get it from NAR. It's professionalism in real estate practice, and it has the code. So that was my little advertisement.
Thanks, Lynn. I think everyone's going to be pleased with the changes that we made. There's 4 specific changes regarding media in the MLS, and I'll say that as Suzanne and Karen mentioned, these changes came about to help consumers, to help realtor members, and also to help the staff. Which is to say, we know now what kind of issues created a lot of phone calls in the support, MLS support, and one of them was this. The rule used to say that there were no identifiable people allowed in media. And so that term identifiable is obviously something that could be debated, and it was debated, caused issues. And so now we say the depiction of people in any media is strictly prohibited. So on the left, you see we are accounting for the fact that you may have a drone video or a drone photography that may have people that are unrecognizable. And so that's obviously important to our work. But the photo on the right is an example of a photo that would not be allowed, that would be prohibited. Obviously, there could be steering issues. I suppose we may not have permission to have this person's photo in MLS. And I'll just remind you that we're talking about MLS here. If you want to have a lifestyle video or photo and your company feels that it's appropriate and that you're not violating any steering or other potential issues, that may be hosted on your site or on your YouTube channel, but not in MLS. And so very specific there about no people depicted in the media. And so the next is that there was a suggestion that we change the rule to have at least 5 photos in MLS. And we debated that at length and realized it's just not practical 100% of the time. So we do want to have, you do have to have one photo in MLS. And we recommend that you have at least 5 or more, obviously. But that one photo must be the primary photo. And you'll find out in a moment why that is more important than before. And so that primary photo is meant to be the subject property, preferably the exterior front elevation, as you see on the screen, and not a view of Diamond Head or the view from the property. That's the definition of the primary photo. And as you can see, there are many reasons why photography sells. And so in addition, I think this is probably one of my favorite changes. You may have experienced, as I have, you're representing a seller, you close the property, the buyer's agent calls and says, hey, my buyer does not care to have all of these photos of their new home on a portal like Zillow or Realtor.com or elsewhere. And there were steps that we would take to try to resolve that. You could stop that listing from being fed to the internet. Some folks actually were taking steps to delete photos from MLS. None of that was desirable for a number of reasons or very easy for us. Well, now we don't have to worry about that as MLS members, because when you change a property to sold, only the primary photo will then be fed by IDX to these portals. So now that's why I say that primary photo should be representative of the property. The moment a property goes to sold, no longer will that list of maybe 40 photos of the entire property be shown in those public portals. However, as members, we will still see all of that photography inside of High Central. If you have a login to High Central, you'll see those photos. So that's going to be helpful for appraisals and CMAs and really make the data that we have access to that much more robust. So now we're avoiding some fair housing, some complaints. In some of these media changes, we're encouraging more complete data. And of course, we're protecting clients and particularly the new buyers' privacy with that last change.
Chuck is absolutely right. I haven't had it in a while, but I have had calls from new buyers. Why are those pictures of our security system still on the web? I see it all the time. So you're really protecting your client, which is what realtors do. They work for the benefit of the client, and these things will help you to do a better job. The potential for fair housing complaints or unintended bias would really go to the advertising or use of pictures. Do I want my potential clients thinking they only service surfers or the young? So just a word for the wise. This is all risk management, and you guys know what to do. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you, Lynn. And then the last media change, there was a time when virtual staging was the extent of where we might see a photo being enhanced. But today, as we move forward, we can change brown grass to green. We can change the image that's on the television in the living room. We can change the view that one sees out the window. There are many other things besides just virtual staging. And what's also happened is there are a number of vendors who will help in these efforts, and they all had their own sort of watermark or way that they would want to identify the property as being the photo as being enhanced, and it was just getting a little confusing. So happily now we have one process. When you upload a photo into High Central MLS, if you put the word enhanced in the description, the new High Central MLS standard enhanced photo watermark will appear on that photo. So we'll just have one standard of watermark, and you'll be able to say that this photo has been enhanced in some way. So it'll cover all those things, not just virtual staging. And then of course, you'll still check the box for enhanced photography on the profile sheet as well. So that's a nice new, cleaner way to let everyone know that we've enhanced a photo.
And Chuck, if I can, I just want to encourage folks, if you have questions, and some of you have submitted your questions, if you could use the Q&A feature, and we're going to let Karen and Chuck go through the whole presentation, and then we will get to all of your questions at the end. So don't hesitate to type the questions as you hear the issue come up, and then we'll work through those at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
May I make just one mention of the use of staged or enhanced photo? Boy, agents, this is really going to protect you.
Yeah.
It protects you from your client going, what? I thought I was getting something beautiful, and this is a teardown. So you're wasting my time. This is a really good change. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
And so now for a system change, as we know, it will be taking the word master. If you have it in your remarks, either public or agent, you, the agent, will get a notice sent to you. It will flag you, and it will ask you, of course, now the lead word will be primary, to please use primary, but you'll get a notice. And we're going back into really encouraging all that haven't taken the Fairhaven simulation to please do that. I was thrilled with the attention that our Pride at Realtor Pride we got at the GMN. And so this really lends into this too, as far as understanding our diversity and equity and inclusion. And I love it that Lynn brought it up about the unintended bias, right? So if you haven't taken Fairhaven, that's my plug. Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is, of course, the benefit to the realtor is safe space for all and supporting NAR's initiatives as well. So.
Right. And as you see on your screen, Articles 1 and 10. Articles 1, again, is protecting your client and working in their best interests. Article 10 goes to discrimination. And as Karen mentioned, unintended bias is mostly what you're going to be on the lookout for in your own self. And it may be a surprise to you how it manifests. It was a surprise to me when I took Fairhaven.
So another aspect of what caused us to make some changes and what has influenced us, I think, for the last few years is obviously the lawsuit with the Department of Justice and NAR, and I'm sure you're following that. And of course, the opportunity that arises at a time like this is for an industry to sort of self-regulate. And so I think that's probably why clear cooperation came about. And we had those thoughts in mind when we made some changes to the days on market and the cumulative days on market. First of all, there are two separate constituents that are concerned with this information, right? There's the consumer and there's the realtor. Well, a realtor could tell today that if it said 4 days on market, but the cumulative was 104 days on market, that information is known to us, but not known to the consumer. And so when a property has been perhaps on the market for 4 months and it comes off for a day and gets a new MLS number and suddenly looks like it's 1 day on the market, that's not necessarily as transparent as we could be with consumers. And so we decided to make some changes to days on market. Currently, it resets when you get a new MLS number, and obviously always resets when the property is sold. But we've changed that so that the listing actually has to be off market for 30 days or listed with a different brokerage or sold before you would get that new or reset days on market. And then similarly with cumulative days on market, the property is, if the property is off the market for 60 days or sold, then it resets. The new calculation is going to be if the property is off the market for a year or the listing is sold. So that in combination with days on market and cumulative days on market, you really get a much better accurate picture of the time the property's been on for sale.
And just jump in here and to reinforce how these changes are integrated into Code of Ethics. Article 12 goes to communication and advertising. you really don't want your clients to get a skewed idea of days on market. You want them to know there are good reasons for these things that happen. So, you know, whether you've taken it off or kept it on, as a buyer, I want to know that as well. So, thank you.
Indeed. So this QR codes on the screen will help you understand examples of exactly how this works. And so I'm sure we can leave that up for a moment. Those are so helpful. And by the way, Karen and I are like co-hosts, and I know she taught me something, which is at about the top of the hour at 3 o'clock today on the Wednesdays is the MLS update. And so in addition to what you'll find on this scan, you're going to find an awful lot of information in the weekly MLS updates right now, sharing not only these rule changes, but lots of other important information.
Well, thank you for the plug on that, Chuck, because 3 weeks ago, even all of what we're discussing right now, there was links that gave additional and deeper dive into the details too. So put it in your Outlook, 3 o'clock on Wednesdays, look for those HBR bulletins. So this one is about listing status types. And I'd like Suzanne to speak a moment about what is RESO and how is that so important to us here at the Honolulu Board of Realtors.
Thanks, Karen. So I think we refer to it as RESO in the MLS world. That's okay. So it's the Real Estate Standards Organization. So as we have migrated out of the book for the old timers into the internet world and having everything online and all of the tools and apps that you have that complement your business, it has become apparent that having data standards across the country when you're talking about property is really important. And so it does create efficiencies for everybody who participates in real estate transactions. It creates a standard naming of particular fields, if you will, so that we're all talking the same language. And I think, as you all know, your listing information now goes to numerous websites. And so it's no longer just a local market that might be looking and is familiar with a term like lanai or something like that. But it's across the country and the world. People are looking at the information. And so we want to make sure that we participate in this organization. High Central MLS has been, I think we were one of the founding members of RESO, and attend these meetings that are conducted, and there's always looking for consistent language so that information can be shared easily and quickly. So
we have this, we have new names for the same statuses that we've had in the past. And that's going back into being able to have this RESO standard. And it's so much easier. After we went through our GMM, I had an agent approach me and say, you know, this just makes so much sense. We're not the only ones that are looking at HBR. And if we're working with realtors across the nation and referring clients to us, how much more easier is it for us? So our in escrow showing is now going to be the status. The name of it is active under contract. And in escrow not showing is pending. And we understand what pending is. You know, there was really wanting to have some clarification to these two definitions. And there seemed to have been some misuse before, where if you were active under contract or in escrow showing, there were agents who were not willing to show the property. Mm-hmm. So let's follow our rules. And if you're really not showing the property, please put it into pending. So as you read the definitions, you'll see how it crosses over. So expired is still expired. The temporary withdrawn is now hold, and the withdrawn is canceled. And that was to bring more clarification to the differences between the two. Lynn, did you want to mention anything on
the two things I wanted to mention? The first was standard of practice. That's what SOP means for Article 3-8. Shall not misrepresent the availability of access to show. This is going to save you from that. This is a get out of jail free card for you, this change. Could you, Jen, could you go back to the second slide? Because I had something to say about, although there's no article on this, well, it could be Article 16. The change from temporarily withdrawn to hold and withdrawn to canceled is going to save you that agony of having your clients contacted by other agents. You know, either you're getting your client calling and saying, people are calling me because they think that I want a new listing agent, or you're going to get, pardon the expression, pissed off and file against someone who's called your client. That's Article 16. You don't want to interrupt the agency of your other colleagues out there. So the status definition change is really going to protect you.
Mm-hmm. And Lynn, I'm just going to add under there, you know, Karen, I think you mentioned that some of these, you know, like active under contract, we used to have it as active continue to show. And, you know, there were problems in the past where you would call and the agent says, oh, yeah, we're not showing it. Well, that is standard of practice 3-8, misrepresenting the availability of access to show. And so in reviewing this, we've, you know, heard that, well, people might keep it active in active under contract because they still want to be able to attract buyers and be able to have conversations with potential buyers so that they can increase their prospect base and whatnot. That's not the purpose of your listing. Your listing is to make it available to show if you are in fact going to leave it active under contract. So just know that you could be facing an ethics violation because that is misrepresenting. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I will just talk about this RESO organization and everything. When we look at participating in that organization and then changing our rules and some of our descriptions and statuses, it's so that there is that common language across the country, and it allows for the faster implementation when you're working with technology providers that are providing you tools. It's a common language base that they're working on. And then it's also providing some clearer definitions between the listing types. So as Lynn said, you're not temporarily withdrawn and then reaching out thinking, oh, I thought that was withdrawn meant that you're no longer working with that agent. So we're doing a lot to clarify things here. And I think some people have talked about, are the slides going to be available? Is the recording going to be available? Yes, we are recording this session right now. It will be available and all the information. And I think as Chuck and Karen have said, Wednesdays at 3, which today is Wednesday. So when this is over, there will be more information. And then this recording will be available, as well as staff being able to come out and speak to brokerage firms, companies, or our regional groups. Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. I was joking with folks about what was my favorite change, and I do believe this is my favorite change. So, as you know, when you have an exempted listing, suddenly you have a different process. You have to have it's all the same paperwork, but you're mailing it into High Central MLS, and you're not tracking it through Matrix. And when you have a change like that, you leave room for error, particularly maybe an error in keeping things up to date, the status changes, and also maybe you just could be out of your not on the top of your mind when you're looking at certain reports in MLS. So to really make the exempted listing process the same as any listing process. Next month, there will now be a way that you'll input that right into Matrix. And so in the current process, as I said, you're handing all of that to High Central MLS, dropping it off or sending it in the mail. But now you'll be able to enter it in, and there will be an option to say this is an exempted listing. And you'll still follow the same rules as always, and particularly when it comes to status changes. But on the next slide, you'll see that we have accommodated for the understanding that an exempted listing does not have the same visibility as an active listing. And so there are two options that you'll see: no visibility and brokerage only. So no visibility, well, I guess in both of these cases, you may have a client, you may have Barack Obama or Bruno Mars or someone, obviously some high VIP, who says, look, I cannot have this public. This listing cannot be public. Well, if you choose no visibility, the listing agent, the broker, and the MLS assistant are the only ones who will see this listing when they look in Matrix. So that's probably the highest level of, or the highest level of security, I guess is what I want to say. For brokerage only, the visibility, when you choose that option, everyone under the same principal broker, everyone with the same company ostensibly will see that listing, and it will be identified as an exempted listing. It'll show up in the reports for anyone who has access or visibility to this listing. And you'll also be able to modify the status, etc., just as you do any listing if you have access to that listing. So this is just a great improvement from manually handling this, this kind of listing. Obviously, the benefits less cumbersome for offices, agents, for the assistant, easier to track and manage all of the listings of a certain company. And then we're hoping to have improved historical data regarding exempted listings, and certainly fewer violations of getting the status changes in a timely manner.
You're right, Chuck. I really like that one. And, you know, when we put this out to the PBs and then to the realtor community, we read every remark that came in. We were really, really listening to the voices out there, and your voice does count. But this one was one where now it puts it in the broker's hands. And it's just so more streamlined than that versus having the exchange between the MLS staff and did I forget to tell them that it's sold? So it's broker directive now. So it's very refreshing. So now rule change coming soon. So coming soon status, the current rule was that you only got to have coming soon once in the life of the property until it's sold. And so we really adapted well when the Clear Cooperation rolled out. There was a great response to it. Coming soon was really well received. But as time went on, we saw that there were going to be conditions where maybe we needed to give a second chance to coming soon. And so this is exactly what it is. With your same brokerage firm, you can have a second chance now. And Chuck shared a story. I'm going to ask him to share again because it put meaning behind like, oh, something happened that this makes sense and why we brought this forward.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. It's true. You know, the committee was full of independent brokers, franchise brokers, sole proprietors, and we all shared stories that were so relevant to these changes. And so right in the middle of our process, I had a situation. So I had an agent who was very excited to take a new listing. They were talking to the seller about the coming soon process and how it would all work. And when they went to put that property into MLS, a message came up and said, you cannot do coming soon because coming soon has already been done on this property. It was something like 20 months prior. A different agent at our company had listed that property for 60 days and it was withdrawn. And now here, some 20 months later, another agent was hoping to do the coming soon process again and listing the property for the second time and got this error. So there are reasons we wouldn't want someone to take the property off and put it back on just to take advantage of coming soon, the coming soon features and benefits. But certainly we figured if a property is off the market for a year, then it is worthy of receiving a second coming soon. And as you see on the screen, there are some some reasons why a property might really change in that year, and so the cosmetic remodels, etc. And so just a much better,
Yeah.
we think, framework for the coming soon process.
Yeah, and that was what the task force recognized. So we're calling this our second chance. And so that's what you'll be able to have available now come in 2023.
May I give a shout out to all our members? I have had exactly one call on coming soon in about a year and a half, because you guys are all doing it right. I'm really proud of you.
That's awesome. So before we get to your specific Q&A, we thought we knew some things you might ask in advance, and one of them is, when did the changes take effect? And that is January 9th, really the first of the year, but programmatically and with a vendor, January 9th is when you'll see these changes. We do hope, actually, when we come out and see you at the regional meetings and come to your office soon enough, we'll have actual screenshots of some of these changes. We don't have those today because the vendor is still working behind the scenes. And then there is a grace period that fines won't happen until March 1st for these changes. So we'll be reminding everyone all throughout January and February. And now we have our friendly reminder again about Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. And I did exactly what Karen suggested, and it's on my calendar right now every Wednesday to just remind me to check my email and make sure that I don't miss that important update.
And I do want to just give a shout out to all of the task force and the MLS committee itself. If you see any of those agents, please thank them. You know, it was very valuable for me. I enjoyed it, but we were all working really hard for you and for our general public. So we've got some great questions already. We've got some FAQs, and then Suzanne, I'll let you take it on fielding questions.
Yep. Thanks, Karen. I think Karen and Chuck, if we were in the big ballroom, we'd be giving you a big round of applause, because you guys did a great presentation, and they've, as Karen said, spent a lot of time listening to input from the various committee members, taking it back to their offices, debating the questions. They didn't just quickly just make changes. It was very thoughtful and over many meetings. So the first question that we have, is this the first one? Yeah. What if the client, so this is going back to the first one that we had talked about, which is the photos of the property. What if the client doesn't want to have any photos of the property at all? Can they enter a listing with 0 photos in the MLS? I'm asking Chuck or Karen, jump on in.
Sure. Yeah, and Jen Sakamoto will help us as well. So I don't believe so, no. So you actually can't add a listing with no photos. As challenging as that may be, perhaps in certain circumstances, you just have to let the client know that that's not possible.
And I think that Chuck, making it that it is the primary photo, so at least the one photo, and that it be an exterior shot of the property. The question also came in for condos. Does the primary photo then have to be of the building overall? Can it be an interior shot of the living room? I think they also asked about the view, but I know that you had said, no, it should not be a copy, a picture of the view.
Yes, I don't know how strongly, candidly, this is policed or will be in the future, but it really is meant to be an exterior photo. So in condos, that would then be, yes, a picture of the building, certainly in the primary photo.
Okay.
One of the things that why it's suggested for the primary photo is this is when it's getting ready to be sold. And so as we know, we're preserving our archive of the history of the properties and for the reasons we're given. So at this particular time, I don't think that there's a fine if you wanted a different shot, but it's, I think, more when you're getting ready to actually close it out, that the request is to have the primary as your lead or main photo.
Okay. And I do want to just say, so that section 1.19-4B, it expressly states all listings must. So must is a required, gotta have it, include at least one photo. So that's an affirmative on that one. One of the other questions was, can the listing agent choose where the watermark appears on the photo? So from our systems analyst, the placement is going to be on the lower right-hand corner. So that is exactly where the watermark is going to be. And the watermark will be semi-transparent. So maybe you'll be able to see through it a little bit. The next question was, after entering enhanced, in the words in the foot, can we include additional comments for each of the enhanced pictures? I believe you can add comments to every photo. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's a great question though. Yeah, you could tell the same story you might tell about any photo, as long as the word enhanced is part of that description, then you'll get the watermark.
You know, there was a question though, it does need to be spelled correctly. So the system will pick it up to watermark it. So check your listings too. Yeah.
That's right. Afterwards, make sure you see that watermark.
Yeah. So someone was saying, you know, depending on if we're putting it in the lower right-hand corner, if there's something specific in the photo, what I would suggest is, if you know the watermark is going to be in the lower right-hand corner and there is a particular photo that you think has something really important, let's say it's a pipe, you may want to make sure when you're taking that photo to account for that, and make sure that below the pipe, you've got some, you know, extra space so that the watermark does not cover something that's important in the photo. So as you're taking the photos or loading them, make sure you're cognizant that that lower right-hand corner will have a watermark that may mask a little bit of what is in the photo.
Hey, Suzanne, I just wanted to add too that I understand there's a vendor like Box Brownie and others who provide a watermark or not. And so going forward, then you will choose to not have their watermark on the photo when you submit it to us, so that there's not two watermarks.
Oh, excellent point. Okay. There's the question about the QR code and the High Central Direct website for the ADU status on DPP site. So for information on the ADU, so you can go to honolulu.gov/DPP. When you go into DPP, that's all of their resources. If you scroll down and look for their FAQs, when you click on DPP's FAQs, they have some specific section questions on ADUs where they can provide you all of that information. Someone else had also asked in the chat about getting a copy of the slides, the recording, the QR codes. Pay attention to your e-news. And so as Karen said, our MLS rules, if this is the first time today, right now at this session, that you're being exposed to the rule changes, I will suggest that make sure you read your e-news, because these rules have been out there for several weeks and our team has been highlighting each of the specific sections each week in the e-news. So if you're able to, you can go back and look at some of your e-news. Also going forward, we'll continue to highlight the e-news, and we always encourage you to attend your regional groups, because East Oahu, for example, will be having their speaker in January specifically on these rules, so you can get more familiar with the rules and have more questions answered. And I believe the slides are going to be made available. Go ahead, Karen.
Yes, for the QR code that we showed on the ADU, that was a link to give you screenshots of how to locate appropriately the ADU and identify it on DPP's website. It's really helpful. It's a quick walkthrough. And so this link is available in the e-news 3 weeks ago. So we will have all this out there for you. So, yeah.
So you can hold, I mean, Jen has put the QR code right up there. You can go ahead and hold your phone up to the screen on your computer and capture that website for you. There is a question here about anyone monitoring agents disclosing their status as agents, their brokerage name, license number on social media. It seems to be rampantly ignored by almost all agents. That's unfortunate, but a reminder, and thank you for bringing this up, is that your requirement from a regulatory standpoint, as well as an ethical standpoint, is to ensure that your status as an agent is disclosed. And so your advertising requires you to put your agent name. Your brokerage firm has to be included on all advertising. Social media is advertising. Your signature line is most likely advertising. You have to have your agent name, your brokerage name, and you have to have, you can either say Realtor, you can put R, you can put Realtor Associate, you can put RA, or you can put your license number. There's all those different options available to you, but you have to put them in there. And for those of you, I'm going to just call it out, those of you who are part of a team, your team is not your brokerage name. So if you're going to include your team, that's fine, but you cannot exclude your brokerage name, and you cannot make your brokerage name smaller than your team name. It has to be prominent. The commission is still working on the statutes. I think it's the admin rule 16-9911 having to do with advertising. They have not yet affirmatively made the rule to put your license number or the size of the company name, but it does have to be, I don't know if it's conspicuous or it's prominent or it's readily apparent or any of those things, but don't disguise your brokerage name. Put it up there. And I would encourage any of you who come across a situation where an agent is not adhering to those rules, feel free to give us a call, but also you can pick up the phone and reach out to your colleague and remind them. This is part of us holding each other accountable. So either way you want to go on that. So if you...
I did want to...
Go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to talk about, I saw in the question and answer about the distinction between Ohana and ADU, if I could address that now. So I have a little story, and they're semi-related because they're called secondary dwellings. But Ohana came first, and then years later, in 2015 is when the law was passed, came along little sister, which was ADU. They're extremely different. They have total different genetic makeup. So the reason we didn't make a requirement for an Ohana permit number is because of the length of time. It may not be available on DPP's website as you go directly into it. They are vast differences, and it's too lengthy to go into now, but you will want to see Ohana in the text, the actual word. It's an Ohana dwelling. There was an overlay. And so we didn't discuss and have the screenshots on how to identify that because it's a little bit more time consuming. We had a lot of discussion on it for the agent for verification. Yes, we advise you to verify it because Ohana itself is poorly misused in daily conversation when describing what somebody may have as just kind of an extra room. So there is a legal definition to it. And I just wanted to add that in because I did see a question about it.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. I know we've passed 2:45, but we do have 5 more questions. So for those of you who want to hang with us, we're going to try to run through these quickly. So the question is, so you could put a listing in pending status, even if you still have outstanding contingencies. And anybody want to take
Suzanne,
that?
I'll take that. And so I think first, this may be a policy of your brokerage about when you can say pending, or you may ask your BIC for some advice, but you may decide, you may legally decide that, yes, even though I don't have a certain contingency met, the sale is solid, the seller doesn't want to show it anymore, we are collectively considering this property pending. What's key here, though, is once it is pending, you're communicating that you're not showing it anymore. So if during this period when you're not sure, should I be active, should my status be, sorry, I'm just going to look for active under contract or pending, what you want to make sure is that prior to having pending, you are communicating to your peers that this property can still be shown. So that's really the basis of this change. Once it's pending, you're communicating, I'm not showing this anymore. And so that, I think, will help drive your understanding of when to change to pending.
Exactly. Those 2 statuses are really dependent upon, obviously you have an accepted contract. Are you showing it? Does your seller want you to show it? Or does the seller not want you to show it? That's the difference between the active under contract and the pending. And it's not your decision, it's your client's decision whether or not they want you to show it or not. So that should be driving you. Great question here about if you, this is for the exempted listing. So if you chose brokerage only for the visibility, will the listing stats be integrated into the greater MLS data? I don't have, I checked with our statistician. So we are working on that. Let me see if I have an updated answer. Let's see. We are working through that. So stay tuned. We'll have a more clear answer on that for you. So if it's only available to your brokerage, I guess the question is that still going to be deemed active or inventory that's active? Is it going to be part of the active inventory? Obviously, when it closes and the brokerage reports it as closed in MLS, it will be considered in the close, but I guess it's more for our active inventory counts on a monthly basis. So we'll get that information to you. Thanks for the question, Olivia.
Suzanne, I'll just say we didn't contemplate any changes to how it's done now. So even now when we hand in the paperwork to MLS and now we'll be inputting into Matrix, we didn't contemplate changing the status now. And so we'll wait for that clarification, but that was not part of a rule change.
Okay. Another question is regarding exempted listing. So if an agent enters an exempted listing and it's available to their own brokerage for viewing, are they then able to remove the exemption after a period of time to have the listing be available to all brokerages?
So I'll take that too. First of all, I'm glad this came up because I forgot to mention, not only will you be able to change the property from exempted to active, but if you violate clear cooperation, you must change the property from exempted to active. And it'll be all that much easier now because it's already in the system. So if you have an exempted listing with visibility of one or the other type, and you accidentally put that property into some Facebook group or have some kind of advertisement, public advertising, then that property is no longer exempt per clear cooperation. You have 24 hours to make it active. So that is correct. There could come a time when your your celebrity status client says, I'm actually okay now with putting it, it hasn't had as much attention as we hoped. Maybe we do need to put this on the public market. You may change that status from exempt to active. Yes.
Thanks, Chuck. This is a question on the ADU. So the ADU explanation is clear, but Ohana units, what defines a unit as such, and how can a listing agent confirm whether something is an Ohana unit?
Thank you. So, right, I was hoping to kind of address that when I spoke before, but Ohana is a different definition. and it will be on tax records as an Ohana. It will have listed that. You will see Ohana dwelling. It's not actually a zoning, it was considered an overlay. So it was an Ohana overlay area, and then they removed some of the overlays, meaning because there was a density that built up. So there is a way to verify it. It's a little bit more time consuming. I will tell you that with zoning, there is a form that you can send in to the land use zoning here in Honolulu, city and county, and they will verify your status. So you can put in the TMK, and there is some conditions because it will tell you when it was built, and it was legal when it was built, and it's legal non-conforming now. And they will also tell you the permit year, because that was important on if something was to be rebuilt, could you build back to the original square footage? So there is a process. And so, it does go through zoning, but it was actually an overlay. It was called Ohana, and it was an overlay that they gave to different areas. I hope that was helpful. A little bit more in depthness.
But thank you. You folks will have heard from Karen and Chuck throughout the presentation. Make sure you check with your brokerage. It is important that agents don't just make a decision on your own, because ultimately all of your actions fall under the brokerage. So first check with your brokerage. With regard to the pending and active under contract has to do with, do you have an accepted contract? So if you have an accepted contract, one of those two statuses should be entered, signifying to the public that there is a contract that has been accepted. And then it's a matter of, are you still going to be showing the property to take backup offers or whatnot? Because this is the information that is needed by agents representing buyers coming in. So I hope that's clarification for you. Any chance of an STR classification? I'm not sure, Chuck, if you guys were addressing that. The STR is so challenging right now, even to know whether something is an STR or not. And so
this is a good time
be down the line, but we're not ready for that yet, because we don't want to expose you to something that we're not ready for. And separately, we are working in our advocacy section on trying to work with the DPP to get that classification of what is a legal STR a little bit more clearly defined. So that's kind of separate from MLS.
Suzanne, I just wanted to mention too that there's actually, so our task force, the 13 hardworking folks that you saw earlier in the presentation, our job was to address the sales side of MLS. There's actually an entire task force for rental changes or rental considerations. And I know that group would be the one that would be looking at whether anything can be done regarding short-term rentals. And I believe it'll be sometime in mid next year that we'll be learning the results of that committee and the changes they're recommending on the rental side. So I believe short-term rental will fall under that group.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. And our final question that was submitted was, is ADU or Ohana, can it be a multiple dwelling situation? I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not sure of the question when you mean multiple dwelling, because ADU can be detached or attached, and so not real clear on what that.
Can you have more than one ADU on a property, Karen? I don't think so.
No, you may not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for attending today, our session. As you've heard us repeatedly, this information is going to continue to be available in our weekly e-news. The rules go into effect January 9th. The fines for these changes, existing rules that have been in place before, there's no change. Those fines are still in play right now, but the new stuff, Fines are waived until, I believe it's March 1st. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, Chuck, Lynn, and Jen, who staffed the committee. And if you believe that you would like to participate in any of our rules committees or our discussion or step up to be a board member, please reach out to us. You can send an email to hbradmin@highcentral.com, or you can give us a call at 808-732-3000. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Happy
Thanks, everyone.
holidays, everybody.
Aloha.